Hello. Good, it works. We're on. Perfect. We are, so this is my first Birds of a Feather. So we'll see how engaging and discussion creating we can be. How many of you guys have been to a Birds of a Feather before? Is anybody? Okay. So good. I may lean on you for the style by which we interact. I'm hoping to just really facilitate a conversation today. Maybe bring some thoughts, maybe more questions than answers about really the notion that community engagement is pretty important, and being purposeful about it, I think, is something that a number of companies have recognized. They've got developer advocates and evangelists and various titles by which and organizations under which those companies engage the community. I end up doing a fair bit of it myself, and here's this is just a little bit about me. So to the extent that you care to heckle me later or poke at me, I mean, please do. I rarely bite. I end up being kind of engaged in wearing a bunch of different hats. I'm generally engaged in the tech community. I currently over at SolarWinds, doing some technology strategy there. But end up doing some writing and podcasting and other things. Pertinent to our discussion, this is kind of a lot of my community involvement. I'm from Austin, Texas, or at least over the last 9 years or so. And decent tech community out there. There's a nice little startup vibe downtown. And then outside of downtown, there's also just some of the larger tech corporations that have presence aren't necessarily downtown, but are kind of on the outskirts. And so Austin, like other places in Texas, ends up being geographically distributed. It takes about 40 minutes or so to go from one end to the next, which is a topic I want to kind of talk to you guys about, or speak with you about venue selection and how that becomes important as you go to build community. Anyway, these are the ones that just I'm engaged in. Most of which are in Austin, so I'm just even for full disclosure, I'm a co-organizer of Docker Austin, and organizer of Microservices and Containers Austin, and so a very containery type focus. We end up getting engaged with just some other local geeks in the community there as well, and I've got a couple of kind of local things between Container Days Austin, DevOps Days Austin, that type of a thing. We're fortunate in Austin in that there are just a lot of technologists, a lot of software engineers, a lot of developers and operators and others into tech. And so if for anything, maybe we suffer from having too many of the same overlapping meetups and things. And so I wanted to ask you guys some questions, really because this is probably less about me speaking at you and more just speaking with you. Because if we are, so we've got I would have been well serviced by bringing my power adapter with me today. But so yeah, this is less me speaking at you, more me hopefully talking with you. But just some questions. So which of you guys tend to frequent meetups? Do you guys been to meetups before? Tend to find value in them? And if you guys don't make it interactive, this is going to die quickly. But yeah, very good. Okay, fair enough. So there's, meetups are run in different ways, but a lot of times, actually, let me maybe speak to my experience about the general format that I find, and let me see if this resonates with your experience and how you've, of the meetups you've been to. A lot of times they sort of generally open up, kind of talk about who the group is, their purpose, maybe asks for announcements from the community if people are looking for jobs or offering up jobs to just kind of generally announce and exchange. You end up having 1 to 2 presenters. They hopefully do a demo. Hopefully they're not selling at you necessarily. There's ideally some food, some beverages. Is that kind of the do you kind of your typical format that you guys are used to seeing? I mean, okay, we're going to talk about some other formats and maybe get your opinion on whether or not some are better than others. So the next question is, which of you guys are looking to maybe found a community or begin to organize one? Any of you guys kind of, organizing, kind of co-organizing, helping do some today? Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, so I guess I already asked that. So good. All right, so I don't know that this is necessarily a blueprint for success, but these are some of the questions you gotta think about and address as you go to either establish a new community or just kind of grow your existing one. I don't know that I've got necessarily the right recipe. I've been doing it for a little while, but so one of the things that I even sort of struggle with is one of the things I was just talking about, which is which is format of the meetup itself. So I don't know if, and this is honestly an open question on my end. I don't have the answer here, but does consistency, maybe meeting at the same time, the same date, the same place, is that consistency just like, kind of like a stand-up, just sort of like, hey, you go to the same place, same time every day. It becomes routine and habit. Does that really like build trust and kind of build a sense of community for that group? Or does that begin to taint your community with either like the venue that you're at? So maybe I'll just give a specific example of a couple of the meetups that we have. I think this actually works well. One of the meetups that I'm engaged with is Docker Austin, and we're fortunate to host it in Austin. There's at Rackspace. There's 2 Rackspace offices in Austin. There's one way on the north end of town, which is kind of what I was going to try to ask you guys. One is location ends up being kind of important to us. In Austin anyway, people don't necessarily, the traffic isn't so great. There's other great things about Austin, but maybe not traffic. Location ends up being an issue for us. So whether you're north or in the downtown, you find a different, typically folks may not make that drive and or just can't because the traffic's just in the way. But let me use maybe Docker Austin as an example of, it's in the Rackspace building up north. Every first Thursday of the month, starts at 6:30, ends at such and such, and it's just like we've got them pre-scheduled out to even if we don't have an agenda and speakers lined up or sponsors lined up, it doesn't matter. It's just like that's the rhythm by which it happens. Versus another one that I organize, Microservices and Containers Austin. I've intentionally separated it. In part, I started it because I was, to be forthright, sort of sick of the overarching hand that Docker has as a company, has on that group. And sort of like you always have to talk about Docker, even though Docker isn't the only container thing out there. And I intentionally have taken that meetup and moved it to different venues on purpose. Like each and every time it must be different, so that people didn't feel like there was an agenda attached, or that because we were meeting in the IBM building, like you had to use Bluemix and whatever it was. So I guess that's something I want to ask you guys, either as meetup goers or as organizers. Do you get that sense? Like, is that something that you've been purposeful about, whether you're organizing or just attending? Does that affect, if you're attending, does that affect when and where you go? Do you feel like, whether by choice of venue, and maybe I'll expand the question, or by presentation from the speaker, is it abrasive to you, or does it rub you the wrong way if their agenda is very clearly open and kind of right there? Yeah. Petey.
So they should get something back. Typically what they get is people in their office so they can hire. So, and it's fine. It doesn't mean that the content changes. So there's absolutely no commitment or even attempt to bring content that is relevant for the hosting company. In many cases, they will also provide a speaker, which is a good thing because we're always struggling for speakers, even for good community.
Yeah.
I can tell. So I'm Krishna from Bangalore. So what I have seen for any meetup, it is the speaker or the topic which actually attracts people.
Okay.
If you have a very good speaker, the guy who knows actually the technology very well, or the topics should be very clearly mentioned in the meetup. The other things like the venue, the company, those things, especially from Bangalore or India context, it's not that big deal.
Okay.
People will come if the topic is good. Like he said, the company, wherever you contact, they will sponsor, so they will pay for the food and
Like sponsors here, they get something from the meetup, otherwise they will not do it.
Right.
so they will get that advertisement that you have.
So for you, it's been like kind of content has been
Content.
like the measure of whether or not you get butts in the seats and people come.
And the speaker, if the speaker is like a big guy from like Docker community or Kubernetes community, then we could clearly say that, you know, this guy is coming. So people
Yeah.
like come.
That's a good point, but yeah, Sean.
So I spent a lot of time in Raleigh, North Carolina, and New York. And for me, I feel like it depends on where you reside, because in New York, it's really hard to have it in the same place all the time, because if you have it in Manhattan, you know, you get everybody coming from outside that are trying to get in, and that can be hard. And but if you're, you know, downtown, it's hard to get out. So the Docker community there is huge. It's like, I mean, I think the first meeting I went to, there was like 150 people there or 200 people there or something like that. So I think I can see why they would want to have it in different locations to, one, kind of control population, and two, allow people from the neighboring areas to be able to make it convenient. And Raleigh, on the other hand, is, I think it would maybe make more sense, have it, you know, the third Thursday of every month, and it's in the same place, or generally the same place. But
Right.
what I struggle with, and what I would love to hear from you guys, is, so I'm on the, I'm a biz dev, I'm a sales guy, I'm not a technologist, so I go to learn about what's going on so I can feel better about the things that I'm doing. But I feel like there's a fine line that has to get walked between people demoing product versus a pitch, and it's really hard sometimes to know, like, you know, are you doing enough to, you know, so that people can find value in what you're showing them, but not so much that you're, you know, saying, hey, I got a PO in my pocket, if you guys want to sign up, just come talk to me and we take credit cards. But you get what I'm saying. And so so the last Docker meetup I went to, there were 3 different presenters, and they really did run the gamut from, you know, just showing a demo of how something worked with Docker versus, we've been in business for 2.5 years, we got, you know, 32 employees, and, you know, blah, 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 you know. So it would be nice to kind of hear what people expect, so that as a company that wants to be involved in that, we don't want to do anything to upset anyone either, you know.
You know, others may have comments, but to me, like one of the delineations that you can use, I think, is population of the area that you're having the venue or the meetup in, the city and its size and its tech, how much tech is there. Because, yeah, for lieu of, I've talked to others actually. Alois from Dynatrace was just in the back, and he's from Austria. He says they have two technical meetups in the area. One is JavaScript, and the other one is sort of the catch-all for everything else. Right. And yeah, like to them, I think that they'd be welcoming of just like, you know, even if it is just a flat-out sell or something, just to learn it and understand it. And in part, it kind of to me feels like when you stop by a booth out here, like, you know, you're learning something, but they're selling you something, and that's essentially kind of what that format. What shape that format takes. I think for some of the other meetups that I'd had up here, we do some meetups in San Francisco around metrics, and yeah, like I think you'll get booed out of the room pretty quick if your corporate agenda or your startup agenda comes up on there. So.
There's probably a good way to avoid this kind of things. It's quite development.
Oh, for sure. No. I wouldn't even consider speaking at something. I would have the CTO come and talk about the underlying technology or
Sometimes developers and development advocates will do commercial
Nice. Well, here's another topic for discussion, and that's welcoming others to kind of share the load, co-organizing. How many? Should you have 12 co-organizers? Is that good, or is that too much? Do their social networks begin to play into this and help bring the right content? Partnering with other meetups. So we're having I didn't even know that I had these examples, but so this month in Austin, we're going to take Cloud Austin and Microservices and Containers Austin. We're going to do a joint meetup. Turns out Mirantis has been going around and trying to get associated with Kubernetes quite a bit, and so they want to offer kind of so they're offering up Kubernetes training. They've done a lot of OpenStack training in the past. Anyway, point being is they want to offer up some Kubernetes 101 type thing, and obviously leading up to people wanting more and then going off and purchasing training through them. Anyway, my point being is, like, to the extent that they were going through and hitting up like every tech meetup in Austin, rather than them offering it like 5 different times, a lot of us co-organizers kind of, frequent other meetups and begin to form relationships and so we've just decided to offer it up once to the community. Didn't know if you guys end up, that same thing kind of happens, or I guess my general point here is, like, I think, hey, you do want to share the load, you do want to have some co-organizers. It's not necessarily like you're founding a startup and you've got to, you don't want to share the pie. In this case, like, I think sharing that pie and that load is good. They bring in other relationships, they hear other things. Anybody, so some meetups do have separate sites, like cloudaustin.com. You can kind of go and learn about it. Maybe they post some blogs as well. And to me, that seems like a lot of extra work. Meetup.com is kind of, sort of the, but that said, that's just, I have seen where others have got separate sites. I don't know do you guys know if any of that's provided value, or some of them have, their own Twitter account, which to me feels like another thing to maintain. We just do hashtags for the most part. Even at that, like, most of the time you get engineers who are in the room and aren't necessarily social. So that in general is kind of an issue. Just getting folks to loosen up a bit and be social is kind of, alcohol is often served at our meetups. It tends to help. I don't know, I think, just reflecting on that for a second, I don't know that most meetup goers that I talk to are pretty forgiving about there not being food or not being drink there, but I also think, like, I don't know, I get really, like, we haven't had an issue where we haven't been able to find a sponsor and get food, and whether it's like, sometimes we'll use a local recruiting agency, like a staff augmentation agency. They just want to get their name there too. They just want to have the right to be able to stand in the back and say, if anybody's looking, come see us. And other than that, they don't. But anyway, so yeah.
I just want to random food note that it's funny, we will not serve pizza at our meetups, only because we're based in San Francisco. So there's at least like 6 meetups within the city on any given day. So there's a lot of competition, and not that food changes people's minds of where they go, but at the same time, when they come to ours, we always do burritos and stuff. And so they're like, the first meetup we ever did, we had burritos, and almost every single person came to me being like, thank you so much for just not having pizza. Like, we don't want pizza anymore. And so it was just really interesting to see, like, people out of everything that we did for this meetup, that's like what people actually randomly thought was cool. So it was interesting to at least see, like, how that kind of helped. And it kind of stays in their mind, like, oh yeah, that one meetup that had something a little bit different.
So it does matter, yeah. I mean, not only.
In a little sense, it was especially for like high impact places where there's so many meetups going on that to stick out is kind of hard.
If you're having it during, from 6 to 7 or from 6:30 to 7.
Yeah, like normal dinner time. Yeah. I mean, for San Francisco, it's like almost necessary just because there's also so many even catering companies, like you said, that just want to help sponsor meetups. So you end up going to some of these meetups that have like super fancy food and just ridiculous stuff. That's because there's like 20 catering companies within a block of each other, so they all are trying to compete to get more people.
Another thing is just, one is just maybe some resources down here at the bottom, but I think it's about finding speakers. Well, it's also, whether or not you can successfully find them and people are readily available is maybe in part based on your location and just, again, how many technologists are around. But to the extent that you don't, and I'm glad that Peeny's here actually, because I know, Peeny and Container Solutions do a lot within the community. I thought I'd point out these two programs. By the way, just disclosure, I'm a CNCF ambassador, but I think it's a good program. It kind of takes a page from Docker captains. And actually, your face looks familiar. You're not a Docker captain.
No, I'm in CNCF.
Oh, you are? Okay, yeah, so that's where, yeah. And Peeny is, you guys have got Docker.
One captain and I'm ambassador. Oh, you're ambassador.
Nice. So you guys span the,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
so,
Generally finding speakers is different difficult because it's consistent. It's not that the conference once a year. And we run 2 big meetups and some smaller ones. And we're not exactly consistent. So,
yeah.
So how do you find speakers? That's my
basically all personal connections, like you need to know when people are in town and ask them all the time.
So one question I want to ask is if ambassadors or captains, if they travel around the globe, right? For example, if somebody's coming to India,
Yeah.
They can come and speak in our meetup like that.
Yeah, that's a good, I don't know that I've got the best answer here other than, I think you can definitely put some feelers out in terms of like on the Slack channel here to just say, have an outstanding request for this stuff. And I've seen people pick it up and keep note. I will say another way that I've seen meetups get speakers is through, as an offshoot of so here in Seattle, I think, what was it, last night or Monday night, Joe Bita and Craig McLucky went to the local Kubernetes meetup because they were here. So I think, yeah, if you've got sometimes not necessarily, you're not poaching speakers from the conference, but just they want another avenue anyway. They've prepared something. I would certainly be having worked with OSCON a fair bit and trying to help them come to Austin and not be successful. And we were also sensitive to not trying to poach their speakers so that people don't have to pay to go to the conference. I mean, it's generally, it's not necessarily that sensitive of a thing, but that's one way. I do know that, yeah, you can, there are, just even reaching out to the individuals that are listed, here is helpful.
What's helped us too for our meetup page, we also have some meetups in the city of Spain because that's where our other office is located. But on our meetups page, we have like a form that says like, hey, if you want to speak, like here's our contact information, contact us. So that way, if the people are visiting that area, and like we have people who are visiting Spain sometimes randomly, like we actually got a Google speaker because he was looking for meetups in the area and he saw our meetup was there. And since our contact info and we announced like, hey, we're looking for speakers, since he saw that on the meetup.com page, it helped. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's nice because then you have at least when they see it, they know you're open. That's helped us. Yeah, and that's what, I think what he was mentioning, just at every single one, we kind of say, hey, if you want to speak, like, come talk to me afterwards, and there's usually some people that do, and yeah, and going to meetups has helped us, has helped me, because I'm still trying to get a lot of contact within the tech community, but going to them, and then after the speaker talks, talking to them and saying, hey, we have this meetup, like, we'd love to have you speak at ours, and then, like he said, you just build those connections over time, and it's been really helpful. But what you might be talking about next, what I would love to hear from people is kind of how avoiding the repeat speakers, but then also kind of making sure that they're not doing a sales pitch. We've had some people, especially when we first started, I don't think I vetted them enough on what they do. Now when they submit something, I go through their abstract and I take out like any selling points and I only keep any technical stuff they write. But it's kind of hard. Like I don't want to like destroy their abstract and like have someone who's volunteering to speak. Like I don't know if anyone else has feedback on how to approach that with a speaker and how to be friendly about it.
That's a good question. I feel like that's somewhat common sense on their part. That they wouldn't, be surprised if you're saying, and maybe a way to just not even address it directly, but it's sort of indirectly say, hey, we really try to facilitate edification of our attendees and just, general knowledge sharing on a particular topic. To the extent that you are able to convey that information by example of your product, okay, and to the extent that people ask more questions about it and want to know more, like sometimes that's ended up happening to us as well. Is they'll give the speaker will give the slightest of teaser about kind of their product, and then people will just like ask, like it will just kind of turn into a sell, which in my mind is like fantastic, because, and as a the speaker has a really great experience as well, and everybody's. I think that's kind of part of the magic trick, is figuring out how to let everybody have a piece of a slice of how to fit everybody's interests, a little bit. Other things about, I didn't even mention this, but some of these programs too, you'd be surprised. You can get some swag and other things kind of that are generally available and for free. I think that sometimes that's kind of nice too. That helps get some butts in this, to the extent that people enjoy the food, that some of the swag. I did like your question though, that which was, hey, is there a balance between, should you ask people in the community to step up and speak, those that are sitting there? And we certainly, or just my take is, we certainly do as well. Sometimes folks are a little bit anxious about that sometimes, and just trying to help be forgiving and help them along. Also just saying, like, if you've got a lightning talk, maybe just like it's a 5-minute deal, or is a way of helping generate that, to the extent that people are scared to step up. Sometimes you get on the other end where like you've got locals that just want to like talk all the time, and then trying to be sensitive when telling them no is tough too. Let me see what the other. Okay. Well, actually, let me skip to this one. Maybe this is more interesting, especially since we've got about 5 minutes left. But any best practices, or maybe areas that you guys, I think you guys have asked a couple of questions already, but areas that you're struggling with? So finding good quality speakers, kind of one, specific to your area. You'd pointed out like, hey, what's the right review process for steering people? A lot of the times we do ask them for their presentations.
You do it for the full presentation?
Yeah, so we ask them for the abstract. We also, just like, like a simple statement that just like says, hey, we're here to, we're in education, or whatever your goal is. Like, hey, our goal is to,
see that the same meetup has the same community and same people. It means if you run it for 2 years, then you have 2 years more or less the same people coming. Say 50-70% of the people in every meetup already been there. I mean, which is fine. They want to socialize with the same people. You're not reaching out to others.
yeah. I've,
So now we're trying to, first we have our commercial consulting company with it's so having
Yeah.
meetup events for these projects. We're not just in the same area like DevOps and
yeah, it's good.
like JavaScript and
Yeah. Moreover, to the extent that one technology sort of gets, the hype cycles for them come and go, not being bounded to.
For example, Java, not JavaScript, just Java, will typically have very different type of people.
Yeah.
So actually going there and offering them their event in their environment is sometimes very useful. Just reach to new people.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to do a containers and big data together, but the problem was there was no right topics or right speaker to come and tell how both are connected, or what is the connection. Otherwise, it will be two independent talks, like one container talk, one big data talk. When you put two meetups together, how do you, at least one session should be there which connect to both the subject, right? Makes sense. So that was another challenge.
Anyway, yeah. Hey, we've suffered from that too. I said one of the meetups is Microservices and Containers.
Yeah.
And we talk about containers a whole hell of a lot.
There is some connection microservices and containers, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And so it turns out we have a lot of talks on containers, and the fewer on like, oh no, we're doing microservices and they're facilitated by containers, and so it's a great story. Yeah, part of our challenge too is like, so at Docker Austin, it was a good example. On any given night, if we say, hey, for who all is it their first time here? Or for who all is it just learning? It's like, you know, like a third or 2/3 raises their hand, like first time and or they barely touch containers. And so it's tough to, like you almost want to tell people up front, hey, we've got a basic talk and we've got an advanced talk, because trying to hit both audiences doesn't really. Another thing somebody else said that was been an issue, I think it was Peony had said was, yeah, to the extent that you get the same core group coming all the time, they've got close relationships, and humans just naturally go over and start talking to the person they know and enjoying it, and then don't realize that the new folks coming in are, you know, maybe it's their first meetup like ever, and don't feel comfortable, don't feel encouraged to be there. So, yeah, I mean, one of the things
that's how it was in New York. The first Docker meetup I went to, there, like everybody was like, they all know each other. Plus, I don't code, so you know.
Yeah, you're always so double estranged, what have you? Yeah, you're
saying words I don't know.
But I think, yeah, I really think that it's the job of the organizers to just like, they need to be gregarious, social, you know, cordial.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I try to like think of it more of like a host perspective. You know, like we have the meetups at our office, so it's a little bit easier for me to play the host role. But I think there's been some meetups that I've gone to where it's like you don't know anyone and you're walking around, you're like, cool. And I try, at least when I'm hosting them, to be kind of right at the door, saying hi, being a friendly face, not only because obviously I couldn't recruit anyone I want to recruit people that are coming in, but it's also just to like actually make it feel welcome.
Yeah.
And I think some of the meetups nowadays just don't have that feeling, and you're just lost. You're like, okay, cool, I want to be a part of this,
Yeah.
but I feel like a really odd person out right now. So it, you know, like how you were saying with kind of now meetups have this like, this is what a meetup is, and there's not really any type of boundary. It would be interesting to see if everyone's meetups can kind of add more of a personal touch.
Yeah.
How much more we grow, actually.
You guys have heard me say Peeny's name a few times, and that's in part because like sort of an embodiment of one of the things that I try to do is just like welcome people, like call out people specifically to just, well, one, wake them back up, because sometimes but then two, just, yeah, make them feel like, you know, they're Arent Gay. Yeah, to your point, like sometimes we have folks coming in and there's pizza on the side and they don't even know that they're welcome to it.
Yeah.
It's just like, and that's how unwelcomed they feel, right? So, yeah. And Gene, you go to a fair number of, you're just a world traveler, but just meetups.
Way too many, but I always know to go for the pizza.
Yeah, there's no question. Shoot. I don't know if there's necessary. I think we're like at time or what have you. I think actually to your point, the reason I'm putting this slide back up isn't because I love to talk about me, but it's more because I was just going to say, like, to the extent that, like, if somebody needs a friend in Austin, so to speak, or we do some stuff in San Francisco as well, like, that might be, you know, another good thing to do is just, yeah, maybe even like as you build out that your Rolodex of you know, tech folks, is maybe even being purposeful about a Rolodex of organizers too, because there's because you know they interact with X number of speakers and you share that. So that's my first birds of a feather. Nice, cool, yeah, very very clearly successful. You know. Oh, thanks guys. That's cool.